This is a brand new one, Chiefs fans. Hope you're ready for it. It is the week 4, the Buffalo Bills. We're going to go over what's changing with the team. There are some things that are getting new. As we look ahead, rather than dwelling on the games of the past against the Pittsburgh Steelers, Matt's going to tell me what I don't know or I should be concerned about, and we're going to get to it right here on Locked On Chiefs.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
We are back. Matt Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com is here. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing pretty well, Ryan. How about yourself?
I'm keeping it together. Made it back, and I'm happy to be in the home studio again. Folks, if you don't know Matt, he runs ChiefsDigest.com, your all-knowing source for stuff that's going on with this franchise. And if you're new to our show, he's here on Wednesdays for you. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics. You can always hear me here as well. A lot of new folks coming to the show this week. It's like you won a playoff game or something, right?
There you go. It's that time of year.
Yeah, right. And as much as we want to be happy about what you saw against Pittsburgh, a performance that was pretty hot once they got rolling, the one team that I felt was even hotter was the Buffalo Bills. So it seems like this is heading in a direction where two teams that are definitely ready to go. I won't say peaked yet because I do feel there's a little bit of upside for both teams, but this should be the marquee matchup of the weekend, shouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, hard to really pick apart anything that the Bills did last week. I mean, that was a near perfect performance offensively, pretty darn good defensively too. The Chiefs only gave up 14 points to the Steelers. I mean, it could have been less if I think hadn't left off the breaks defensively a little bit in the second half just to get some backups in and everything. And outside of those first 4 drives, but they didn't score, the Chiefs otherwise were perfect on Sunday against the Steelers. So yeah, I mean, 2 offenses that put up 88 points combined last week. Gosh, what you're expecting another boat race this week, right?
Yeah, I mean, the front office at the NFL headquarters is losing their mind about how well this matchup could go. So
Josh,
they
Allen,
are
Patrick
slated for
Mahomes,
the last game. Yeah, head to head. And I think it's one of many, to tell you the truth. It hasn't been quite such a tight shootout to this point in this series with Mahomes at the helm here. He's going to get a little bit of help. We expect some changes at the running back position. Clearly the surprise, I mean, pleasant surprise, because I thought we thought he had it in him of this last game was Jerick McKinnon. Looks like he should be in line for a good share. Now the question becomes, is Daryl's foot going to be better? Did you take away from Andy Reid's comments that it truly was still the injury with the toe, or was this a very good point to be able to say, hey, Daryl doesn't feel 100%. There's this fumble thing. We're just going to let him kind of ride it out a little bit.
Yeah, it certainly. I think they're definitely putting it on the toe that he just was not 100%, and that would certainly be consistent with what we saw. I mean, in the couple of plays that he was in there, I don't think Daryl looked particularly comfortable. He was limited during the week, so probably, and with the way that the Chiefs operate this time of year in practice, I mean, Thursday would have been really the only time that he would be in a full contact type situation. So it's not even probably the best way to be able to judge yourself for game day. And it gave it a try, but I don't think there was any doubt that he wasn't 100% comfortable. The Chiefs, even though they played their cards pretty close to the vest, I mean, they went into Sunday expecting Jerick McKinnon to get the bulk of the carries. They were certainly going to the plan was to give Daryl mostly a day off. I mean, I think even then, I mean, the intention was just to leave him as the third down back. And as the game wore on, he really wasn't even that. So McKinnon got a lot of work. And that was certainly more work than I expected. I thought he might even share the load a little bit with Derek Gore, but honestly, that was the Jet McKinnon show on Sunday.
Yeah, did it turn into just riding the hot hand? That was my perception.
It could have been a little bit of that, but I remember too. I mean, this is certainly an Andy Reid type of MO that once you get to the postseason, you're going to ride the veterans. And so that's why it shouldn't, in retrospect, it probably shouldn't have surprised me that much that Derek Gore didn't get that many touches. I think that, Andy's going to go with the more experienced hands. And honestly, I mean, in the Kansas City backfield, Jerick McKinnon's the most experienced running back they've got. I mean, remember, the guy's an 8-year veteran. He's been around for a long, long time. And this wasn't his first postseason game. Wasn't, as much as we talked about him, going over 100 yards, total, wasn't even his first 100-yard total game in the playoffs. He's done that before. So, the Chiefs have no qualms. They have complete trust in Jerick McKinnon because, as Andy would like to say, this isn't his first rodeo. And they definitely, I think you're probably right. I don't necessarily think that they planned on him being the entire show on Sunday, but with the way that he was playing, there was no reason not to keep riding him.
Well, now in their situation where they might get Clyde back, Daryl will have another week of mostly rest, is my guess. So you're in a situation where you have 4 backs that you could run, you can utilize, and I think we'll see a little bit more mixture. Do you feel like this is an opportunity because you have that much depth to let Clyde sit it out again?
Yeah, I think there's a distinct chance of that. I mean, I certainly didn't get a lot of optimism from Andy Reid on Monday about Clyde's situation. And remember when he tested it out last Wednesday and wasn't comfortable, that was at a practice without contact or pads or helmets. I mean, that was a low impact practice on Wednesday. So even this week, Wednesday's practice isn't going to tell us very much about Clyde's availability. Now, if he doesn't work on Wednesday, yeah, that's going to tell you a lot. But wait until Thursday and Friday, really, to see what his participation is then. If he's limited Wednesday, let's see what happens Thursday and Friday. But honestly, I mean, going into the week right now, I would not expect probably Clyde to be back. I think next week is probably a much more reasonable date at this point.
And that makes sense to me too. So we need to take a look at what is going to be going on in this game. I have a couple of questions for you. We're going to do that right after this. No matter what your New Year's resolution is this year, it's about getting fit or getting healthier, whichever you want. Make sure that you enjoy and add Built Bar to your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. They're incredible in all kinds of different flavors, and they make them even better. Use it as your resolution this year because it tastes so good. It takes you so far in what you want to do. It's not chalky or waxy or anything negative. It allows you to get the protein that you need, all the macros that you need without having to spend a whole lot of calories there and without having to worry about what the ingredients are that you're ingesting. They're covered in 100% chocolate, and they cover all kinds of things, generally around 130 to 150 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein on average. And there's all kinds of flavors for every palate out there. Whether it's post-workout or filling in for a meal, you can find something that you want. I personally love all the cookie dough ones as well as the coconut-based flavors. And there's all kinds of new ones always lighting off every week. All you have to do is go to built.com and use the promo code. You get 15% off of your order. The promo code is LOCKED15 for Locked On Network, and that's 15% off of your order at built.com. Now, one of the conundrums when you broke down the game and the snap counts, it felt like there was a question there with Willie Gay's participation. Played well, I thought, particularly right off the bat, was mixing it up, but didn't get a lot of run against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, for me, given that they were bottling up the Najee Harris run game, it felt like that was an opportunity to rest him for what should be an idea that Willie Gay is probably your best guy to try to manage the run game of one Josh Allen. He's probably also, at least early in the route, within the first 10 yards, probably the best guy to try to muscle up on Dawson Knox, who has been the crutch for Allen over the last couple of seasons. It has a knack for making plays against the Chiefs. Was this an opportunity? Do you have any concerns about Willie Gay going into this game against the Bills?
Not really. I mean, Gay was on the injury report last week with a wrist injury that he's been dealing with, which, hey, that could have been a factor, but it hasn't been something that, one, he didn't have a game tag, so there was no doubt he was able to play the game, and Andy Reid hasn't even listed it as part of their injury concern. So I don't think that's an issue. I mean, I think it was mostly scheme. I mean, remember, the Chiefs spent a lot of that game in a nickel packages, which meant that they only had 2 linebackers out there most of the time. And against the Steelers, this is a team that, for what they have, I mean, they can run the football and they like to run it physically between the tackles. Who's the better fit for that? I mean, that's the Nick Bolton package. I mean, that's what they have him there for. So I think it was just that scheme-wise, they felt that Nick Bolton was a better fit against the Steelers. What's the better fit against the Bills? I anticipate that's going to be Willie Gay. And if having fewer snaps, let him rest that wrist up a little bit. He was certainly productive, I thought, in the snaps that he played. I didn't think there was any issues there. But you're right. I mean, with Josh Allen and his ability to scramble, I think Willie Gay is better fit for this week's defensive scheme, and that's probably why you're going to see a lot more of him.
Okay. I'm trying to put myself at ease there because I think it is important when we start to look at what they need to do, that is the Buffalo Bills. They're not going to lean too heavily on the run game. They haven't been able to do that with much success. Can they get a couple of spark plays from Singletary or maybe Moss? It's possible. But really it is first and foremost about not only what the quarterback does in the throw game, but what he does with his legs. And do you think that this is game, with all that said, that they have to put kind of a spy package in place if you're Steve Spagnuolo?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's what you do have to do. We'll see what the Chiefs end up deciding, but you're absolutely right. I mean, even though the Bills have had a pretty good run of being able to put some numbers up on the ground late in the season, there's a bit of an asterisk to it. I mean, they did that against the Falcons and the Jets late in the season against two teams that weren't going anywhere. That's not, big surprise to me. It's a little bit more of a surprise that they do it in a playoff game against Bill Belichick's defense. I mean, that's a little bit more impressive to me. But then again, I mean, there was a bit of a backbreaker there because of the 74 yards of rushing that they had, 66 of them were Josh Allen. And a lot of those were killer yards early on scrambles. And I know he had, a design run too of a read option. I mean, by the time that Singletary started getting his yards, game was over. So, I mean, that was a little bit of just running out the clock and trying to control things a little bit. I mean, Josh Allen's the one that's going to kill you. I mean, I have no doubt that if the Chiefs lose this game, it's not going to be because Singletary goes off for 120 yards. It's going to be because Josh Allen beat you with his legs and he beat you with his arm.
I'm completely with you. And so that said, then we have to look at what does he do in the pass game. And Diggs is clearly the big name. Isaiah McKenzie got some nice receptions in the last ball game as well. For you, when you take a look at what Allen has done against the Chiefs in the past and what he's done recently, where do you put your priority in terms of how to take away those passes that he likes to make?
Yeah, I mean, to me, a lot of it is about just, containing him in the pocket because, what are the things that Josh Allen likes to do? I mean, one, yeah, he likes to run, but two, he likes to get outside the pocket and extend plays and do a little the same kind of things that Patrick Mahomes does. So to me, what do you do to make Josh Allen uncomfortable? One, you keep him in the pocket. And certainly a big part of that's going to be on Melvin Ingram and Frank Clark. Setting the edge, not just run, but pass too. I mean, you got to make sure that he's not escaping and getting to the outside. I mean, that's when Josh Allen is most dangerous, whether he's throwing on the run or he's taking off. So you set the edge and make sure that he can't get away. And then it's a matter of getting up in his face and making him uncomfortable. Hey, you get sacks, great. But to me, it's about, getting up in front of him. It's about getting hands up in front. It's about making him feel that there's pressure coming at him because that's when he has traditionally made mistakes and he gets inaccurate. The real challenge with Allen is that he gets to the outside. I mean, he's got a lot of targets that can get some time, and he's got some guys that he depends on. I mean, especially in the red zone. I mean, Knox is right up there as, one of his favorite guys, and that can be a challenging matchup depending on who's going to be on him. But to me, if you want to make Allen get him off target, I mean, the way to do that is you keep him in the pocket and you get in his face.
I think they know how to do that. I think this Chiefs front has been preparing for this. They have to make sure that they contain things. And it's funny when you take a look at these two teams, like the concept of how you go about defending them, it's like a mirror image. This is the same thing that every defense goes through every week when they face Patrick Mahomes. So I feel like that plays into their ability to prepare for this particular kind of game. And is that wishful thinking, or do you think that they have an edge here in getting ready for a quarterback just like their own?
No, I think you're right. I mean, I feel like the same thing. I mean, as I just keep, breaking down the Bills this week and looking at it, and I'm like, gosh, I mean, we know that Josh Allen has a little Mahomes in him. I mean, I don't know. It's not an insult to call him Mahomes light or anything. But I mean, it's a different flavor, the same kind of quarterback. And that's a compliment to Allen. I mean, he's a good quarterback. He's really good at what he does. But you're right. I mean, I think the best way that you play both these guys is a lot the same way. And, the Bills defense and the Chiefs defense are a little bit different. You know, they're equipped a little bit differently. I mean, I think they both have some different strengths and weaknesses, but I think they're both the same in the sense that, you know, they like to try and get pressure on quarterbacks, but they're not necessarily have been great this year at getting home and getting a lot of sacks and piling up the numbers. I mean, it's a little bit of a, you know, a team approach. I mean, they're definitely, you know, they're fine getting pressure on the quarterback. They just want to get there and make a guy uncomfortable. It's, you know, it's like Steve Spagnuolo. I mean, you know, hey, the sacks are great, but what they want to make sure that they're getting pressure consistently on the quarterback. If they get sacks, fantastic, but they want to just always make that quarterback uncomfortable. And the Bills have the kind of same approach too.
I think whoever does that best is really what's going to be the limitation of this game and how you go about winning it. Who's going to be there to do it and who's going to be there to help is going to be a question. We're going to get into what's changing about this team or could be around the corner coming up next. BetOnline is here to wish you a good start to this next betting season for the NFL playoffs on through March Madness and everything beyond. It's the #1 spot for you to get all your sports wagering action going in 2022. The new year, a new desktop, you can get that same bonus. Sign up now, you get 50% on top of your deposit. All you got to do is use the promo code Locked On. Super easy. You can bet every major sport and even some of the ones you don't recognize, particularly football for right now. Take all the advantage of all these amazing offers in 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. So change is a winning franchise like this. We're talking about trying to make a run to a third straight Super Bowl, which is incredible in and of itself. When you have that kind of success, you're going to draw interest. And what we've seen is the ramp up lately in not just the coaching staff, but the front office staff as well. Is this the way that they're going about it, first and foremost, with a lot of Zoom meetings, and then you get to a second tier, second round of interviews, that kind of thing. Does this feel like a better process to you in terms of keeping the staff as they are now focused on what their goal is here in the middle of a playoff run while still getting them exposure to other teams who might want to hire them?
Yeah, you know, I hate the NFL's hiring process for for coaches, for GMs, for everything. Because, I mean, one, I think it fuels the NFL continuing to make bad decisions and bad hires. I mean, the fact that there are going to be teams that are going to be hiring a head coach for the sole purpose that the guy's available now and not somebody that they have to wait until February to get. I mean, if you've got a coach, if you've got an employee that you want to hire who's the best person for the job, and you want that guy to be your head coach for maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years, why are you going to let 2 weeks hold you up? Because that might very well be, you know, what keeps some of these guys out of jobs again. I mean, because even though the NFL has improved the process a little bit, some of it is very cosmetic and was inconsequential. I mean, allowing teams to interview coaches during the last 2 weeks of the season, if they had an opening, was almost non-existent. I mean, one, you know, the only 2 teams that had openings were Jacksonville and the Raiders. And the Raiders had an interim head coach in place, so they weren't really shopping for a coach before the season was over. They were trying to get in the playoffs. And Jacksonville, you know, I mean, they're just a dumpster fire of an organization right now. So I don't know if they really took advantage of that best that they could. But then you get into the postseason, and once again, you get into the same problems, which is that, you know, even though this week guys like Eric Bieniemy can be interviewing for jobs, after this week, that shuts down, and they're still not going to be able to, you know, get hired until their seasons are over. So what's going to happen after this weekend's games? If the Chiefs win, Eric Bieniemy is going to be out of the running for a lot of jobs. I mean, it's only going to be an organization that is, I think, really committed to Eric Bieniemy that's going to be in business for him. So once again, it's going to be the teams that make the Super Bowl. It's going to be really hard to get a job if you're on one of those teams. And that's been a big part of why the Chiefs have not been rated, I think, the last 2 years, because teams are, well, for the most part, if you're looking for a head coach, you're a bad team and you're a bad organization. So I guess you make bad choices. I shouldn't be surprised by that. But no, I mean, it's once again, I mean, the NFL system continues to punish the coaches for teams that win and keep winning. And to me, I mean, the great solution would be, guess what? Nobody can hire a coach until after the Super Bowl. But that's just me.
No, it makes a whole lot of sense. It goes towards stacking, you know, the deck against coaches on good teams. And with the enemy out front like he is every year, I think Coach Reed has gone out of his way to kind of make that point early and often here, even before this wild card round. We know that he has interest from the Denver Broncos. We know that there's some other interest out there. Do you feel that it's enough? Is there enough momentum right now? Do you think that Eric Bieniemy finally gets a head coaching position this year?
Well, Andy seems pretty confident of it. I thought that, his last week, that saying that he thinks that this is the year that it happens, I think is the most declarative statement that we've probably seen from Andy Reid. So I think he's certainly optimistic of it. And I would not be surprised at all, especially knowing Eric Bieniemy, that if he's trying to downplay this a little bit this year, the process, and keep it more low key, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there's no doubt that Eric Bieniemy, the one thing that I've ever seen him be uncomfortable with is uncomfortable as the poster child of the NFL's head coach hiring process and the deficiencies of it. And that's what he's become. I don't think he, is really comfortable in that kind of spotlight. And I think he feels like, it's, it puts him in a tough situation. And I think it puts teams in a tough situation too. I mean, it's made him a bigger part of the story than he wants it to be. I mean, he'd like to be getting a job based on his merits, and the fact that a lot of other things are getting pulled into this, I think, makes him uncomfortable. So, hey, he was, I thought, pretty forthright with us last week when we asked him some, tough questions about the whole process, and he got some questions that maybe were a little bit, maybe over the line. I don't know about that, but so maybe some people thought that they were. But I can definitely see it that if he wants to have this be more of a low-key process, maybe other teams want it to be more of a low-key process, I wouldn't be surprised, and I wouldn't blame him for it.
Yeah, I think that's probably the way that it's leaning. On the other hand, it's a little bit different when you're not out there with the team every day and you're working in the front office. Ryan Poles has gotten a lot of attention so far. A first interview with the New York Giants, who are one of the early outs. But the second round, they have come out and said that they're narrowing their process to a second group of core candidates, and Poles seems to be included. That's a step farther than last season with the Carolina Panthers. So, that's a step forward for him. There's some interest for both of these guys from other teams. In terms of rating the Chiefs front office, it's been very slow going, and almost to the point where I feel like it's a little more accessible to do that even during a playoff run than it is the coaching staff. So, does it surprise you that Poles hasn't necessarily been offered a position yet? Do you think that happens this year? And what about Mike Morganzi, who's got a little bit more experience and a little bit of a name that I think keeps popping up, but we don't see the interviews happening?
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me yet that Poles or even Borgonzi haven't gotten jobs. I am with you. I'm surprised that Borgonzi hasn't been more of a target. I mean, I think that, he has been the number 2 guy to Brett Veach, and remember, I mean, these guys were really, co-equals. I mean, under John Dorsey, they were basically 2A and 2B under Dorsey. I mean, that's how close they were. I mean, they shared the same job title at one point. And they were both obviously candidates for the Chiefs job. And Poles wasn't even in that conversation yet. And remember, too, we're talking about this to a degree, the Chiefs front office has been rated. I mean, Chris Ballard goes to the Colts. That was their top GM candidate a few years ago. Dorsey's gone. Veach takes that job. So now there's a second candidate that's, even though they're still here in Kansas City, was a candidate in the organization who becomes a GM. So now you're getting down to the next, group of younger guys. And Poles is 37. Borgonzi, I think, in that same ballpark. These are all still relatively young guys, which I think certainly plays in their favor, because that seems to be what NFL teams are looking for, are young, up and coming guys rather than retreads who have been around for a while. Looking for people that have, fresh takes and everything. So I think it plays in both their favors. But it's been kind of interesting to me that Poles has been the one that's had the kind of meteoric rise. No knock against him. I think that they're both deserving candidates. I've just been surprised that it's been Poles that's gotten a lot of the heat, and Borgonzi maybe not as much.
I'm in favor of former offensive linemen running teams. I think that's a good way to get back to running the ball a little bit. That's just my inside take.
Nothing wrong with that at all. Nothing wrong with a good. Hey, offensive linemen usually have the highest Wonderlic, so smartest guys in the room,
right? Hey, there you go. So on top of that, and all these rumors that are out there about who has interest where, What do you see happening? Do you see anything happening with Eric Bieniemy and Ryan Poles in particular?
Yeah, I mean, there's only 4 GM jobs open. I mean, that's half as many as the coaching jobs are. So, hey, it's going to be harder for polls just because there's fewer opportunities. But clearly, hey, if getting a second interview looks like with the Giants is a big part of it. Certainly, there's been interest with the other teams that have GM jobs. So, polls may very well be a candidate for every GM job opening that's out there. Certainly increases his chances. But with Bieniemy, hey, I still am in the category that if I'm Eric Bieniemy, even though I want to be a head coach, there's probably some jobs that I still don't want to take. If I'm him, I don't want the Jacksonville Jaguars job. I don't think he's going to be I don't think he's going to be a candidate for the Texans job, but I wouldn't want that either. So and he's clearly, I mean, just because of Matt Nagy being there, he's not going to be a candidate for the Chicago job. But the two that I anticipate that he will be in play for, Denver has already expressed an interest in wanting to interview him. And right now, I mean, you look at the betting odds, which are almost, unfortunately, always wrong, but he's the favorite in Minnesota. And, and a lot of things in favor of him there. Obviously, he's coached there before. Has a lot of fans in that organization that are still there. Ownership likes him, from my understanding. I mean, I think there's a lot of things, and I know that Eric Bieniemy really enjoyed his time in Minnesota, and I think that would be a good fit because of that. Now, what I see from Minnesota fans is, that they're apprehensive about it being, comparisons to Brad Childress and them not having a lot of great memories of Brad. But at the same time, I mean, you know what? Brad won some games in Minnesota too, and he put together a fantastic coaching staff that maybe if he'd had more time, maybe it does work out there. But I think either one of those two. I mean, I think that the better job is Minnesota, because with Denver, certainly they're going to have a new ownership in the next 6 months. I don't know if that would be a great fit for a head coach either. But I think there's smoke with the Vikings, and I'm really interested to see how that plays out.
I am as well, and I know you all are. Matt, thanks for clearing us up and giving us the inside scoop of where we're at against the Buffalo Bills.
Pleasure as always, Ryan. Do my best.
We
Great talking
appreciate
to you, man.
You too. I'll try not to talk over you anymore, folks. Make sure that you go check out Chiefs Digest for all the information that you need. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Have a great one. We'll talk to you then.